Head chef forced black female server to cook to humiliate her. The unthinkable happened. "You think you know better than me?" A nobody server correcting a Michelin-starred chef. Chef Antoine Bourdeaux's voice cut through the kitchen like a freshly sharpened knife. 6'2" with broad shoulders and a presence that dominated every room, he towered over Maya Johnson, a slender black woman whose server uniform suddenly felt like a target on her back. The spatula he thrust into her hands felt impossibly heavy as 20 pairs of eyes locked onto her face. "I just thought," Maya began, her voice barely audible over the sizzling pans and kitchen fans. "You don't get paid to think," Antoine snapped, his French accent thickening with rage. "You get paid to carry plates." The entire kitchen froze. Line cooks stopped chopping. Sous chefs abandoned their stations. Through the glass wall separating kitchen from dining room, wealthy patrons in designer clothing leaned forward, sensing drama unfolding amid their $400 dinner service. Maya's hands trembled, but her eyes, those eyes held something Antoine hadn't expected. Not just fear. Something else. Something that made him want to crush whatever spark lived there. "Since our server believes she knows more about cuisine than someone who trained in Paris for 15 years, Antoine announced loudly, his smile cruel and tight, "let's conduct a little experiment. Maya here is going to prepare the coq au vin special. Right now. During peak service." Laughter rippled through the kitchen staff. A line cook smirked. "Better not burn the sauce, waitress." Maya stood motionless, the weight of 20 years of dreams and her grandmother's voice echoing in her mind. The spatula in her hand stopped trembling. "The station is yours," Antoine said with mock graciousness, sweeping his arm toward the cooking area. "You have 30 minutes. Let's all watch this experiment fail." Through the kitchen's glass wall, diners were now openly staring. At the corner table, a woman with a notebook, food critic Diane Reynolds, lowered her menu and focused intently on the drama unfolding in the kitchen. Maya took one step forward, then another. Something in her posture changed, subtle but unmistakable. Her shoulders straightened. Her chin lifted slightly. Her fingers adjusted their grip on the spatula with unexpected precision. 8 months later, Maya would stand under blinding lights, wearing crisp white chef's whites embroidered with her name, facing Antoine across a competition kitchen as cameras captured every moment of the most anticipated cooking showdown in television history. But tonight, she was just a server being humiliated for daring to suggest that a sauce needed a touch more seasoning. Or so everyone thought. No one in that kitchen could have predicted what would happen when Maya finally approached the cooking station. No one could have imagined the chain of events that would transform not just 2 lives, but an entire industry's understanding of where true culinary brilliance comes from. And no one, especially not Antoine Bourdeaux, was prepared for what happens when someone with nothing left to lose finally shows the world what they've been hiding. This story exposes the hidden battles fought in kitchens across America. Our channel gives voice to those silenced by power. Subscribe now if you believe everyone deserves to be seen for their true talents. Your subscription literally helps us uncover more stories that would otherwise remain buried. 5 hours before her humiliation at Lumiere, Maya Johnson woke in her Bronx apartment. 400 square feet of carefully guarded secrets. Morning light filtered through thin curtains, illuminating what looked at first glance like ordinary kitchen tools hanging on the wall. Look closer, a hand-carved wooden kokanti stick her grandmother had used for 40 years. A set of mortars and pestles in graduated sizes. A collection of knives with handles worn smooth from 3 generations of hands. Maya's fingers moved with practiced precision as she diced an onion into perfect, identical cubes. Her knife moved in a blur, a daily ritual performed before her 12-hour server shift. The rhythm of blade against cutting board played like a heartbeat, connecting her to something deeper than her tiny apartment, her exhausting job, her carefully constructed American life. "The knife is not separate from your hand," her grandmother Afia's voice echoed from memory. "It is an extension of your fingers, your heart, your history." 10 years earlier in Accra, Ghana, 12-year-old Maya stood in her grandmother's outdoor kitchen, sweat beading on her forehead as Afia wrapped a cloth around her eyes. "Now, tell me what you smell," Grandmother Afia commanded, waving something beneath Maya's nose. "Grains of paradise," young Maya answered without hesitation, "mixed with dried ginger and a touch of cinnamon." Afia laughed with delight. "And this one?" Maya inhaled deeply. "Prekeys. For the pepper soup." "Your nose knows truth that eyes can miss," Afia said, removing the blindfold. "This is how we have cooked for centuries when fancy measuring spoons didn't exist. Feel the food. Listen to it. The food will tell you what it needs." Back in her apartment, adult Maya opened a worn leather-bound notebook filled with recipes written in her grandmother's handwriting. Pages stained with turmeric and palm oil. The true repository of her heritage, dishes she hadn't cooked in nearly 2 years. Not since Daniel. Chef Daniel Porter of the now-closed Gaia restaurant, who had discovered Maya cooking staff meal at her previous restaurant job. Who had befriended her, encouraged her, asked questions about her grandmother's recipes. Who had then debuted his innovative African-inspired menu, featuring dishes suspiciously identical to Afia's sacred family recipes. Elevated traditional cuisine, he called it in Food and Wine magazine. No mention of Ghana. No mention of Maya. Her phone alarm chimed. Time to transform from chef to server. Maya changed into her black uniform, pulled her hair back severely, and tucked her cooking dreams away like the precious notebook she slid beneath her mattress. On her nightstand stood a framed photo of her younger brother Philip in his university uniform in Accra. Her monthly wire transfers, nearly 70% of her income, paid his engineering tuition. 6 more months until his graduation. 6 more months of anonymity. Of biting her tongue when customers complained about perfectly cooked food. Of watching chefs like Antoine Bourdeaux claim culinary territory they hadn't earned. "I promise, grandmother," Maya whispered, touching the photo of Afia that hung by her door. "After Philip graduates, I will cook our food again. With pride. With your name attached." Maya locked her apartment door, hiding away the truth of who she really was. In 3 hours, she would stand in Lumiere's gleaming kitchen, a spatula trembling in her hand, facing a choice: remain invisible or risk everything. What would make a talented chef hide in plain sight as a server? What wounds had taught Maya to shrink herself, to serve rather than create? And what might happen if the right person, someone with power, with influence, with integrity, witnessed what Maya could really do? If you've ever had your voice silenced or your talents dismissed, this story will resonate in your soul. Subscribe now to join thousands standing against the theft of cultural heritage and demanding recognition for hidden talent. Your subscription powers our mission to tell stories that challenge who gets to claim expertise in our world. The secret to my success is simple: pure innovation. Antoine Bourdeaux smiled into the camera on Good Morning America. His perfectly pressed chef's jacket gleamed under the studio lights. "I don't follow trends. I create them." The morning audience applauded as Antoine described his latest breakthrough, a North African fusion sauce that had food critics raving. "It came to me during meditation," he explained with practiced humility. "Some chefs rely on tradition. I prefer to listen to my own creative voice." 20 minutes after that interview aired, Antoine stormed through Lumiere's kitchen, barking orders as prep cooks scrambled to avoid his path. In the corner, Line cook Mateo Rodriguez quietly prepared the very sauce Antoine had just claimed to have invented on national television. Too much cumin, Antoine snapped, hovering over Mateo's station. And the consistency is wrong. Mateo's jaw tightened. This is how my grandmother taught me in Marrakesh. The balance of spices. Your grandmother doesn't have a Michelin star, Antoine cut him off, grabbing the wooden spoon. He added a splash of white wine, the only change to Mateo's family recipe, and stirred aggressively. There. Now it's sauce Bordeaux. Maya, arranging silverware nearby, caught Mateo's eyes. A silent exchange of understanding passed between them, the shared experience of having heritage repackaged and renamed. In Antoine's office, a wall of magazine covers and awards dominated the space. Food and Wine's Innovator of the Year. Gourmet's Boundary-Breaking Chef. James Beard's Excellence in Culinary Creativity. A shrine to a genius who didn't exist. What the glossy magazines didn't show was Antoine's fury 3 months earlier when Bon Appetit credited chef Leila Hassan for pioneering the North African French techniques Antoine claimed as his own. He had thrown the magazine across the restaurant, shattering a vase. That woman cooks street food, he'd raged. I created culinary art. Maya had witnessed it all from her first day at Lumiere. The Thai coconut broth technique borrowed from dishwasher Suchinda and rebranded as Coconut Velouté Bordeaux. The fermentation method taken from Korean prep cook Jean and claimed as Antoine's experimental preservation. Each time, the pattern was identical. Observe, appropriate, rename, claim. After the incident with Mateo's sauce, Maya began keeping notes in a small pad hidden in her apron pocket. Dates, dishes, their true origins, and Antoine's claims. She wasn't sure why, perhaps as evidence, perhaps as memory, but something told her to document what she witnessed. Never underestimate a thief's memory, her grandmother had once told her. They remember exactly whom they've stolen from and live in fear of being discovered. 2 weeks before the night that would change everything, Maya served a table of international businesspeople. Among them, a distinguished Ghanaian man who paused after his first bite of Antoine's signature, exotic spice-crusted sea base. This technique, he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, reminds me of home. The spice mixture, the way it's pressed into the fish rather than sprinkled, this is traditional Ghanaian kelaweel preparation applied to fish. The table turned to Maya. Please tell the chef this is the most authentic African technique I've experienced in Western cuisine. Someone in that kitchen understands our traditions. Maya nodded, heart racing as she carried the message to Antoine, who stood at the pass inspecting dishes. Table 7 sends compliments on the authentic Ghanaian technique in the sea base. Antoine's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. What technique? The gentleman said it's a kelaweel method of applying spices. He's from Ghana and recognized. I don't need geography lessons from waitstaff, Antoine hissed, but his eyes betrayed something beyond anger, fear. Tell them the chef appreciates their enjoyment of his original creation. Maya delivered the message, but as she turned to leave, the Ghanaian businessman stopped her. Are you familiar with Ghanaian cooking? He asked. A dangerous question. Maya hesitated, feeling Antoine's gaze from across the room. My grandmother is from Accra, she answered quietly. The man smiled. I thought so. Your hand movements when you served, very precise, very familiar. He lowered his voice. Some traditions can't be stolen because they live in our muscles, not just our recipes. Remember that. That night, Maya added a new entry to her hidden notebook, kelaweel technique, chef claims original creation, customer recognized authentic method. The culinary world's hidden truth. How many celebrated innovations were stolen from immigrant cooks who remain invisible? This story finally brings that reality to light. If you believe in credit where it's truly due, subscribe now and join our community fighting for recognition of the hands that truly feed our culture. Every subscription amplifies voices that have been silenced by the powerful gatekeepers of cuisine. The Wallace Foundation dinner at Lumiere wasn't just another service, it represented potential funding that could expand the restaurant's empire. 6 billionaires, 3 celebrities, and food critic Diane Reynolds occupied the private dining room, with restaurant owner Bennett Hudson personally overseeing every detail. For this crucial dinner, Antoine had selected his signature dish, lavender-scented duck with cherry gastrique, the creation that had earned him his first Michelin star. Perfect temperature, impeccable presentation, Maya heard Antoine instruct as she entered the kitchen to collect the entrees. 8 plates lined the pass, each identical, the duck's skin glistening, the sauce drizzled with architectural precision. Maya loaded her tray carefully, balancing the heavy plates as she pushed through the swinging door into the private dining room. The guests fell silent in anticipation as she began serving. Bennett Hudson stood nearby, anxiously watching the diners' reactions. At the head of the table sat Diane Reynolds, whose reviews had built and destroyed restaurant empires. She cut into her duck, took a bite, and frowned. She dipped her spoon into the gastrique, tasted it alone, then pushed her plate slightly away. Maya's stomach tightened. Something was wrong. When she returned to the kitchen, Antoine was preparing the next course, unaware of the reaction. "Chef," Maya said quietly, "Ms. Reynolds seems concerned about the gastrique." Antoine's head snapped up. "Impossible. I made it myself." He strode past Maya into the dining room, returning moments later with Diane's plate. The kitchen fell silent as he tasted the sauce. His face contorted. "It's broken," he muttered in disbelief. "And the balance is off." The sauce had separated, the flavors disjointed. On the most important night possible. Maya watched as Antoine frantically attempted to recreate the sauce, cursing under his breath. The dining room was waiting. Bennett appeared at the kitchen door, his expression tight with concern. "Antoine, what's happening?" "The Wallace table is waiting." "A minor issue," Antoine replied, his voice strained as he whisked furiously. But the sauce continued to separate, the acids fighting the fats, the sweetness overwhelming the delicate duck flavor. "It needs grains of paradise and lower heat," Maya whispered to herself, the words escaping before she could catch them. A lesson from her grandmother about balancing bitter and sweet, about coaxing ingredients rather than forcing them. The kitchen went silent. Antoine turned slowly, his face flushing dark red as he realized Maya had spoken. Diane Reynolds had followed Bennett into the kitchen and stood watching the drama unfold. "What did you say?" Antoine's voice was dangerously quiet. Maya froze. I'm sorry, chef. I didn't mean." "No, please," he interrupted, his tone mocking as he gestured toward the stove. "Since our server is apparently a culinary genius, perhaps she should show us how to fix a sauce that took me years to perfect." The kitchen staff exchanged glances. Bennett looked uncomfortable but remained silent. Diane Reynolds raised an eyebrow, suddenly interested in more than just dinner. Antoine thrust the whisk toward Maya. "Go ahead. Show us all what a server knows about French gastronomy." Maya stood motionless, years of hiding warring with the truth in her hands, in her blood. She thought of her grandmother, of her brother studying engineering with the money she sent home, of all the reasons to keep her head down and remain invisible. Then she thought of Mateo's stolen sauce, of Daniel taking her family's recipes, of Antoine's empire built on the genius of others. She stepped forward and took the whisk. Something shifted in the air as Maya approached the stove. Her shoulders, normally hunched in the defensive posture of someone trying to avoid attention, straightened. Her movements, usually efficient but unremarkable, took on a fluid grace. "Lower heat first," she said quietly, adjusting the flame with the confidence of someone who had controlled fire her entire life. From her apron pocket, she produced a small vial, one of several spices she carried always, a habit her grandmother had instilled. "Grains of paradise," she explained, adding a precise pinch to the sauce. The kitchen watched in stunned silence as Maya's hands moved with mesmerizing efficiency. She didn't measure, she felt. She didn't time, she watched, listened, smelled. When she added a splash of cold butter, she didn't stir. She swirled the pan with a flick of her wrist that spoke of thousands of hours of practice. 2 minutes. That's all it took before Maya presented a spoon to Antoine. The sauce was now silky, balanced, transformed, the original concept fulfilled rather than reinvented. Antoine's face cycled through emotions: disbelief, anger, confusion, and something else, fear. He tasted the sauce, and for perhaps the first time in his professional life, found himself speechless. Diane Reynolds stepped forward and tasted as well. Her eyes widened, then fixed on Maya with newfound interest. "Where did you learn to do that?" she asked. Before Maya could answer, Antoine regained his composure. "Back to your station," he snapped at Maya. "I'll handle my kitchen." But something had changed. As Maya returned to the dining room, carrying the fixed dish, she felt eyes following her. Diane's curious gaze, Bennett's calculating assessment, and Antoine's burning stare that promised consequences. What had she done? What ancestral knowledge had just revealed itself through her hands? And how would Antoine, a man whose reputation was built on being irreplaceable, respond to this public challenge to his expertise? The culinary world thrives on the unheard voices working behind the scenes. How many hands remain invisible while others claim the spotlight? Hit subscribe now if you believe talent deserves recognition regardless of title or background. Your subscription helps amplify stories of brilliance that power struggles try to silence. Don't let these truths remain hidden in the kitchen. 4:10 excruciating seconds after Maya fixed the sauce, the kitchen remained frozen. Bennett Hudson glanced between Antoine and Maya, calculating the financial implications of what he'd just witnessed. Diane Reynolds scribbled something in her notebook. The kitchen staff held their breath. Antoine broke the silence with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Impressive party trick," he said, voice dripping with condescension. "But anyone can fix a sauce with the right spice. A true chef creates." He clapped his hands sharply, drawing all eyes back to him. "Since you're so eager to prove yourself in my kitchen, let's make this interesting." His smile tightened. "Create an entire dish. Something worthy of Lumiere's standards." Maya's moment of triumph evaporated. This wasn't an opportunity. It was a trap. "I need to serve my tables," she said quietly. "Zoe will cover them," Antoine replied, nodding to his loyal sous chef. "You have 30 minutes. Use Station 4. Station 4, the one nearest the dishwashing area, with uneven heat distribution and a prep surface too small for proper mise en place. The message was clear. This challenge was designed for failure. "Oh, and Maya," Antoine added loudly enough for everyone to hear, "use only what's in the second reach in. We wouldn't want to waste premium ingredients on an experiment." The second refrigerator contained the oldest produce, the cuts of protein nearest expiration. Maya opened it to find limp vegetables, a few eggs past their prime, and tough cuts of meat that had been bypassed for more tender options. As she surveyed her options, kitchen alliances formed silently around her. Zoe hovered near Antoine, smirking at Maya's predicament. But Mateo slid a container of his freshly made harissa toward Maya's station when Antoine wasn't looking. June, a Korean prep cook whose kimchi technique Antoine had claimed as his own revolutionary fermentation method, deliberately bumped into Maya's station, leaving behind a bundle of fresh herbs from his personal supply. 28 minutes remained. Maya closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. Her grandmother's voice came to her. The best cooks can make beauty from scraps. That's how our ancestors survived. She selected a tough cut of goat, something most French kitchens would braise for hours. But Maya knew techniques from Ghana that could transform it quickly. She reached for her pocket spices, combining grains of paradise with coriander and her grandmother's secret blend. "No personal ingredients," Antoine called out, catching the movement. "This is about your skill, not your seasonings." Maya nodded, outwardly compliant while her mind raced through alternatives. She spotted dried herbs in the spice rack, not the fresh ones she preferred, but workable. 25 minutes left. As Maya worked, the kitchen's rhythm changed. Staff members found reasons to pass by her station, some to observe, others to subtly assist. When Zoe accidentally increased the heat on Maya's burner, threatening to scorch her sauce, June conveniently dropped a towel that Maya used to quickly move the pot. 15 minutes remaining, Antoine announced with satisfaction, certain the challenge was impossible. Maya didn't look up. Her hands moved with increasing confidence, combining French technique with Ghanaian instinct. She created a marinade that would tenderize the meat in minutes rather than hours, a street food technique from Accra markets. She prepared a cassava dumpling using French quenelle methods her grandmother would never have known. The scent that began to emerge from her station told its own story, unfamiliar yet inviting, complex yet harmonious. Heads turned. Even Antoine paused while plating another dish, his nostrils flaring slightly. 5 minutes, he called, a new edge of concern in his voice. Maya plated with precision, creating a dish that spoke 2 culinary languages simultaneously. Goat medallions with a Ghanaian spice crust, served on a cassava plantain puree with a French-style reduction sauce. She finished with a delicate herb arrangement that honored both traditions. As she placed the final element, the timer buzzed. "Time," Antoine announced, approaching her station with Bennett and Diane following closely. The kitchen fell silent again as Antoine examined the plate. His face cycled through emotions with each element he assessed. Shock at the transformation of inferior ingredients, denial that such complexity could emerge from a server's hands, rage at being challenged in his domain, and finally, calculation. He tasted a small bite, his expression deliberately neutral. But his eyes betrayed him, widening slightly at flavors his trained palate recognized as exceptional. Diane Reynolds stepped forward. "May I?" Antoine couldn't refuse with Bennett watching. Diane tasted, closed her eyes, then wrote something in her notebook that made Antoine's jaw tighten. "Well?" Bennett asked, impatient for the verdict that would determine whether he needed to worry about his chef's reputation, and by extension, his restaurant's. Antoine placed the fork down carefully. Technically competent, he conceded with practiced indifference. "The flavors are interesting, different, perhaps adequate for staff meal, but naturally lacking the refinement our clientele expects." Maya stood motionless, her face betraying nothing. But inside, a fire had been lit. She knew what she had created. And more importantly, she knew that Antoine knew. "Back to your tables, Maya," Antoine said dismissively. "The Wallace party is waiting for dessert." As Maya removed her apron, Diane Reynolds caught her eye and nodded almost imperceptibly. A silent acknowledgement had passed between them, recognition that transcended Antoine's dismissal. The kitchen returned to service, but something fundamental had shifted. Staff members looked at Maya differently as she exited to the dining room. Antoine watched her go, his expression calculating as he considered how to neutralize the threat she now represented. Maya returned to being invisible, carrying plates and filling water glasses. But her hands, those hands that had just created something extraordinary, no longer trembled when Antoine passed by. They knew their own power now. Every day, extraordinary talent goes unrecognized because of bias and power. Our channel fights to change that narrative. Subscribe now if you believe in giving voice to the overlooked brilliance all around us. Your subscription directly enables us to find and tell these crucial stories. Jordan Barnes wasn't just a line cook at Lumiere. He was also a culinary school dropout with 50,000 TikTok followers. When he witnessed Maya's challenge, his phone was already recording from his apron pocket. Didn't expect much when I posted it, Jordan would later tell a food podcast. Just thought people should see what really happens in fancy kitchens. The 12-minute video, Michelin chef forces server to cook, get schooled, hit 100,000 views in its first hour. By midnight, it had reached 1 million. Restaurants operated on reputation, and this video tore the glossy veneer off Lumiere's pristine image. Maya woke at 5 a.m. to her phone vibrating off her nightstand. 37 missed calls. Hundreds of messages. Her Instagram followers had jumped from 230 to 15,000 overnight. "Is this you?" texted a former co-worker with a link to the video. Maya watched in horror as her private humiliation played out on screen. But what shocked her more was the comment section. The way her hands moved when she fixed that sauce. Can we talk about how she created a whole dish from garbage ingredients? Chef was shook when he tasted her food. #Who is Maya trending because talent can't stay hidden. At 7 a.m., Diane Reynolds published her weekly blog with an unexpected headline, "The Server Who Outcooked a Michelin Star." The respected critic wrote, "For 15 years, I've documented the rise and fall of culinary stars. Last night, I witnessed something unprecedented. A server named Maya Johnson created a dish that surpassed her celebrated boss using inferior ingredients and half the time. The question isn't whether Maya can cook, it's why she's carrying plates instead of creating them." The post was shared 10,000 times before Maya finished her morning coffee. At 9 a.m., Antoine appeared on Rise and Dine America in damage control mode, his smile strained under the studio lights. "Maya has been like a protégé to me," he claimed smoothly. "I've been mentoring her behind the scenes for months. What viewers saw was simply the culmination of my teaching methods." The host leaned forward. "But in the video, you seem surprised by her skills." Antoine's laugh sounded rehearsed. "Television creates narratives. In reality, I've always recognized her potential." At Lumiere, Bennett Hudson paced his office, phone pressed to his ear as his publicist delivered the numbers. Reservation cancellations had spiked 30% overnight. Social media sentiment toward Antoine had plummeted. Meanwhile, people were calling asking specifically if the server from the video would be working. "This is a disaster," Bennett muttered, watching his investment crumble in real time. Maya's phone rang again, an unknown number. "Ms. Johnson? This is Gabrielle Wong from Fresh Talent Agency. We represent several top culinary personalities and would love to discuss representation." Before Maya could process this, another call, the producer of Chef's Challenge, offering a guest spot. Then, a publishing agent interested in a cookbook focusing on Ghanaian French fusion. The world had suddenly discovered Maya Johnson. But not everyone was celebrating her rise. "You need to issue a statement immediately," Antoine's voice thundered through Maya's phone. "Clarify that I've been mentoring you. Fix this misconception." "That would be lying," Maya replied quietly. "Listen carefully. Antoine's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. I know every executive chef in this city. One word from me, and you'll never work in a professional kitchen. Ever. Understand? The threat hung in the air as Maya ended the call. 10 minutes later, Bennett Hudson requested her presence in his office. We have a situation, Bennett said, gesturing for Maya to sit. Our reservations are down, social media is on fire, and Diane Reynolds has informed me she won't be covering Lumiere again unless changes are made. Maya waited, hands folded in her lap. I'm prepared to offer you a position as junior sous chef, effective immediately. With Antoine as your direct supervisor, of course. The offer was both opportunity and prison sentence. Maya thought of Antoine's threat, of her brother's tuition payments, of the 15 years she'd spent hiding her talent. I appreciate the offer, but... Bennett cut her off. This isn't just an offer, Maya. Diane Reynolds has made it clear, either we recognize your talent officially, or she writes an exposé on cultural appropriation in fine dining, with Lumiere as her prime example. 7,000 miles away in Accra, Ghana, Afia Johnson sat surrounded by neighbors in her modest home, all staring at a smartphone screen. On it, her granddaughter transformed a French sauce with the same hand movements Afia had taught her decades earlier. Again, Afia requested, tears streaming down her weathered face as the neighbors replayed the video. Show me again how my Maya showed them our ways. When Maya's brother Philip called, his voice trembled with excitement. Grandmother hasn't stopped watching. She keeps saying, they see her now. They finally see her. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of heritage, opportunity, and choice pressing down on her. The culinary world was suddenly watching. Antoine was scrambling. Bennett was negotiating. But the voice that mattered most was her grandmother's. They see you now. With recognition came power. With power came choice. The question wasn't whether Maya would cook professionally, but on whose terms, and at what cost to her integrity. The truth about talent is that it eventually finds its way to light, even when powerful forces try to keep it hidden. If you've ever been dismissed or overlooked, hit that subscribe button now. Your support ensures we continue exposing how systems of power suppress authentic voices. Every subscription funds another story that forces the world to see brilliance that others tried to keep invisible. I'm declining your offer, Mr. Hudson. 5 words that changed everything. Bennett stared at Maya across his desk, dumbfounded. You're turning down a sous chef position? Do you understand what that means for your career? Maya nodded, her posture different now, spine straight, shoulders back, the physical embodiment of a woman who had reclaimed her power. I understand exactly what it means. It means becoming Antoine's subordinate after he threatened to blacklist me. It means cooking his food, not mine. 3 hours earlier, Maya had received an unexpected call from Diane Reynolds. I have a proposition, the critic had said. A 3-month pop-up restaurant. My investment, your food. Complete creative control. Now, as Bennett stammered about reconsideration, Maya's mind was already mapping out menus that would finally honor both her heritage and her training. I'm calling it Homecoming, she told Diane that evening as they toured an empty space in Chelsea. Ghanaian soul through a French lens. While Maya planned her future, Antoine watched his carefully constructed empire begin to crumble. 68 cancellations today, his host informed him grimly. And Kitchencraft is reconsidering their endorsement deal. The cookware company that paid Antoine $300,000 annually had emailed requesting a meeting about brand alignment concerns. His publisher had delayed his upcoming cookbook indefinitely, citing scheduling conflicts. The morning shows that once competed for his appearances now ignored his publicist's calls. Antoine poured himself a third scotch, scrolling through social media with growing horror. The hashtag Maya's meal had overtaken hashtag Lumiere experience. Former employees were coming forward with their own stories of stolen recipes and cultural appropriation. "We need to contain this," his publicist advised. "Issue a formal apology. Emphasize your commitment to mentoring diverse talent." Antoine hurled his glass across the room. Apologize? For what? Being successful. Creating a world-class restaurant. But even as he raged, Antoine knew. The world had seen behind the curtain. In her apartment, Maya placed a video call to Ghana. Her grandmother's face filled the screen, eyes bright with pride. "Tell me again about the fufu dumplings," Maya asked, notebook open. "The ones with the cassava and plantain mix." For 3 hours, they cooked together across continents. Afia in her outdoor kitchen in Accra, Maya in her tiny New York apartment. Techniques never written down, measurements determined by feel rather than cups or spoons, stories embedded in every dish. "Remember," Afia instructed as Maya worked the dough, "our food carries our history. During colonial times, our ancestors combined their techniques with European methods not to impress, but to survive. Your fusion isn't trend, it's testimony." While Maya reconnected with her roots, Antoine retreated to his home kitchen with a stack of books on African cuisine. He hired a cultural consultant specializing in West African foodways, demanding crash course education on ingredients he'd previously dismissed as primitive. "These grains of paradise," he asked, examining the spice Maya had used. "How exactly are they employed in traditional cooking?" The consultant regarded him coolly. "These techniques take years to master, chef. They're passed down through generations, not acquired in afternoon sessions." Antoine dismissed her with a wave. "I don't need years. I need enough to demonstrate respect for the tradition while elevating it." In the weeks that followed, two paths diverged dramatically. Maya's pop-up homecoming opened to 2-hour wait times. Food critics raved about dishes that honor tradition while embracing innovation. Her kelaweel-crusted sea base, a deliberate reclamation of the dish Antoine had appropriated, became her signature, photographed thousands of times daily. But success brought challenges. Investors approached with franchise opportunities. A streaming service pitched a documentary series. A major hotel chain offered a restaurant with her name above the door. "They want me to scale immediately," Maya confided to Matteo, who had quit Lumiere to join her team. "But these dishes tell specific stories. My grandmother's hands are in every bite. How do I grow without losing that?" Meanwhile, Lumiere's table sat empty. Antoine's hastily created, African-inspired tasting menu was panned as superficial and performatively exotic. One devastating review called it cultural tourism without a passport. In late-night kitchen sessions, Antoine pushed himself toward technical perfection, determined to prove his superior skill could overcome Maya's inherited knowledge. Then came the envelopes, identical cream-colored invitations delivered to both chefs on the same morning. The Global Fusion Culinary Competition cordially invites you to participate in our televised championship. The most prestigious cooking competition in the world, broadcast to 150 countries, career-defining for its participants. Maya, invited as the exciting new voice redefining fusion cuisine. Antoine, invited as the established master defending traditional French technique. The inevitable confrontation now had a date, a time, and a global audience. The culinary world is finally acknowledging what home cooks have always known. Authentic cultural knowledge can't be bought or stolen. it must be lived, honored, and earned. If you believe true expertise deserves recognition over appropriation, subscribe now and share this video. Your engagement directly challenges the systems that have silenced authentic voices for generations. Join us in this fight for cultural respect and recognition. 6 weeks before the Global Fusion Championship, Maya transformed the backroom of her pop-up into a test kitchen. Notebooks filled with her grandmother's recipes lined makeshift shelves. Spices imported directly from Ghana's central market filled labeled jars. The air hummed with possibility. The competition theme is Heritage Reimagined, Maya explained to her team. We honor where we come from while showing where we're going. Her core team had expanded beyond Mateo. There was Layla, a Syrian refugee whose hands worked magic with phyllo dough, Jung Ki, whose Korean fermentation techniques created unexpected depth, and Inez, whose Puerto Rican flavor combinations challenged Maya's palate daily. Each had approached Maya after the viral video, sharing stories of their own culinary identities hidden beneath other chefs' egos. Today we're developing our signature competition dish, Maya announced, tying her apron, no longer a server's uniform but a chef's badge of honor. But first, I want to taste what each of you brought. This had become their ritual, team members presenting family dishes, sharing techniques their previous employers had overlooked or appropriated. What began as recipe development had evolved into something more powerful, a kitchen where heritage was currency, not something to hide. My grandmother's mantai, Layla offered, presenting delicate dumplings. The folding technique is specific to our village. Maya studied Layla's hands, noting the precise movement. Teach me, she requested simply. Across town, Antoine paced his near-empty restaurant, surrounded by books on West African cuisine. His kitchen whiteboard displayed a competition strategy with military precision. Phase 1. Master techniques. Phase 2. Develop signature fusion. Phase 3. Test market response. Phase 4. Refine for competition. But the plan was failing. 3 Ghanaian chefs had already declined his collaboration offers, polite rejections masking obvious disdain. His attempts to recreate traditional techniques felt mechanical, like an actor mimicking movements without understanding their purpose. The grains of paradise aren't integrating correctly, he snapped at his remaining sous chef. The flavor profile lacks something. The something was heritage, the weight of history carried in hands that had performed these techniques for generations. Antoine could copy movements but couldn't replicate meaning. In desperation, he summoned his assistant. I need information on Maya's competition preparations. Find someone who can visit her pop-up regularly. Someone she wouldn't recognize. 2 days later, a culinary student posing as a food blogger secured a reservation at homecoming. His mission: document every detail of Maya's developing dishes, particularly anything with competition potential. Meanwhile, media coverage intensified. Food and Wine ran parallel profiles, Maya Johnson, authentic voice rising, beside Antoine Bordeaux, fighting for relevance. Cooking channels crafted dramatic promos featuring Maya's humble beginnings contrasted with Antoine's crumbling empire. The narrative wrote itself: underdog versus establishment, authenticity versus appropriation. 3 weeks before competition, Maya made a decision. I need to go home, she told her team. To Ghana. To remember with my hands, not just my mind. The journey to Accra transported Maya beyond physical distance. In her grandmother's outdoor kitchen, time shifted. Cooking became conversation, ingredients became language. For the competition, Afia said, crushing roasted peanuts in her mortar, you must make something they have never seen but will never forget. Together, they cooked dawn till dusk, not following recipes but remembering them physically. Maya's hands moved alongside her grandmother's, generations of knowledge flowing between them. "This," Afia said, guiding Maya's wrist in a specific stirring motion for Shito sauce, "cannot be learned from books. It must be remembered by the body." On her final night in Ghana, Maya and her grandmother sat beneath stars, sharing a meal they'd prepared together. "When I was your age," Afia said quietly, "a French chef visited our village. He watched me cook, took notes, then opened a restaurant in Europe claiming he'd discovered our cuisine. No one believed it belonged to us first." Maya squeezed her grandmother's weathered hand. "They'll believe now." Back in New York, Maya discovered Antoine's spy had visited her pop-up 6 times. Rather than anger, she felt an unexpected compassion. How desperate must he be, how empty his own well of ideas, to resort to stealing hers. In the final days before competition, the contrast couldn't have been starker. Antoine drilled his team relentlessly, demanding perfection in techniques he barely understood himself. Maya's kitchen moved like a dance, each member contributing, collaborating, honoring each other's heritage while creating something entirely new. The evening before departing for the competition in Paris, Maya gathered her team. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we've already won. We've created a kitchen where no one needs to hide who they are or where they came from." As lights dimmed in her restaurant, Maya added one final ingredient to her competition dish, something unexpected, something that would tell her story in a single bite. What would Maya bring to the world stage that could never be replicated? And after months of desperate study, had Antoine learned the lesson that mattered most? That true cuisine isn't just about technique but about truth? The battle for culinary respect extends far beyond one kitchen. Countless talented hands create food that nourishes our communities while their contributions remain invisible. Subscribe now if you believe in amplifying these authentic voices. Your subscription doesn't just support our storytelling, it helps create a world where culinary heritage is protected and respected, not plundered for profit. Paris, Global Fusion Championship. 8 million viewers watching live. 3 Michelin-starred judges waiting. 2 chefs, 1 stage. Maya stepped onto the competition floor, the bright lights momentarily blinding after months in her modest pop-up kitchen. Across the gleaming expanse stood Antoine, his chef whites pristine, his station meticulously organized. Their eyes met briefly, his narrowed with determination, hers calm with purpose. "Today," announced acclaimed chef and head judge Luciana Martel, "our finalists will create dishes representing heritage reimagined. They have 90 minutes to tell their story through food." Cameras swooped overhead as the countdown began. The audience hushed, witnessing the culmination of a rivalry that had captivated the culinary world. Antoine moved with machine precision, each action economical and practiced. His hands chopped, seared, and plated with the confidence of someone who had spent decades at the pinnacle of his profession. His strategy was clear: demonstrate mastery of Ghanaian techniques while maintaining French refinement. Show the world he could absorb any culinary language and speak it fluently. Chef Bordeaux is preparing what appears to be a deconstructed Ghanaian red stew with French execution, the commentator noted. His knife work is impeccable. 20 feet away, Maya unpacked her ingredients differently. Before touching her knife, she closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. Her shoulders relaxed. Her grandmother's voice echoed, "Cook from memory, not for applause." When she began, her movements formed a rhythm rather than a sequence. She didn't just cut, she conversed with her ingredients. The plantains weren't just sliced, they were acknowledged. The cassava wasn't merely prepped, it was respected. Chef Johnson's approach is fascinating, the commentator observed. There's an intimacy to her process we rarely see at this level of competition. 40 minutes in, Antoine glanced across at Maya's station. His confidence faltered momentarily. While he executed flawless technique, something about Maya's cooking looked like joy. Not the grim determination of proving something, but the pleasure of creating something meaningful. For a fleeting second, Antoine remembered his earliest days in the kitchen, before accolades, before ego, before cuisine became conquest rather than expression. When had cooking stopped being a conversation and become a monologue? The realization nearly cost him his timing. He shook it off, refocusing on his dish: black base with Ghanaian groundnut sauce reduction, smoked plantain puree, and cassava crisp. Technical mastery incorporating traditional ingredients, exactly what the judges expected from someone of his caliber. At 75 minutes, Maya reached into her station and withdrew something unexpected: a small wooden kokanti stick, worn smooth from decades of use. Her grandmother had pressed it into her hands before leaving Ghana. "So your ancestors can cook with you." The simple implement transformed her movements, connecting technique to meaning. Her dish took form: grains of paradise-crusted guinea fowl with dual heritage sauce, one side representing French influence, the other Ghanaian tradition, meeting in the center rather than overwriting each other. The metaphor wasn't subtle, but it was honest. 1 minute remaining, Luciana announced. Antoine placed his final garnish with tweezers, stepping back to assess his creation. Perfect height, perfect temperature, perfect balance. A dish that would impress anyone who tasted it. Maya placed her final element, a delicate herb that grew both in French countryside and Ghanaian villages. Her plate wasn't architecturally stunning like Antoine's, but it radiated something else entirely: authenticity. "Time," called Luciana. "Hands up, please." The moment of judgment arrived. 3 world-renowned chefs approached the tasting table. First, Antoine's creation. "Technically flawless," noted Chef Johannes, the German judge. "The sauce reduction shows masterful control." "I appreciate the nod to Ghanaian flavors," said Chef Kwame, the only African judge. "Though something feels—" He paused, searching for the word. "Studied rather than intuitive." Antoine's face remained professionally neutral, but his hands clenched slightly at his sides. Then came Maya's dish. The judges' reactions shifted immediately. Chef Luciana's eyebrows raised after her first bite. Chef Johannes closed his eyes, focused entirely on the flavors. Chef Kwame placed his fork down slowly, emotion crossing his normally stoic face. "This dish—" Chef Kwame began, then paused to collect himself. "This dish doesn't just represent heritage, it embodies it. I taste not just ingredients but story." "The technique bridges traditions without diminishing either," Chef Luciana added. "There's confidence here, but also humility." Chef Johannes nodded. "I've judged 1,000 competitions, but rarely do I taste something that makes me feel rather than simply appreciate." Antoine watched the judges' reactions, his professional mask slipping slightly. In their faces, he recognized something he'd been chasing his entire career: not just respect, but connection. Maya's food had achieved what his technical perfection couldn't. It had reached beyond the palate to touch memory, emotion, truth. The judges conferred briefly, then returned to their positions. The studio fell silent. 8 million viewers held their breath. Luciana stepped forward. "Both chefs have presented exceptional dishes today. One demonstrates absolute mastery of technique. The other reminds us why we cook in the first place." She opened the envelope, the moment stretching into eternity. "The winner of the Global Fusion Championship is—" Maya stood motionless, thinking not of victory but of her grandmother watching from Ghana. of the immigrant cooks in her kitchen seeing themselves represented on this stage, of the journey from invisible server to this moment of truth. Antoine straightened his spine, preparing himself for either outcome, the first major defeat of his career or a vindication that might feel suddenly hollow. The cameras zoomed in on Luciana's face as she prepared to announce the champion. True talent deserves recognition, yet how many voices remain silenced? Our channel exists to ensure these stories reach the world. Subscribe now to join a community that believes in celebrating authentic brilliance. Your subscription is a direct vote for the stories that need telling most. The winner of the Global Fusion Championship is Maya Johnson. The audience erupted. Maya's team embraced in the viewing area, tears streaming down faces. In Ghana, Afia's neighbors lifted her onto their shoulders in celebration. Maya accepted the trophy with trembling hands, her journey from invisible server to culinary champion complete in 8 short months. What happened next stunned 8 million viewers. Antoine Bourdeaux stepped forward, requesting the microphone. "I need to say something," he began, his voice uncharacteristically raw. "Maya didn't just win today. She exposed a truth the culinary world needs to hear." The room hushed. Much of what I've claimed as innovation was appropriation. Techniques I presented as invention were actually heritage I didn't understand or properly credit. Maya's victory isn't just about superior cooking, it's about authentic connection to culinary roots I pretended to have. He turned to Maya. "I apologize. Not just to you, but to everyone whose contributions I've diminished or erased." Maya's response came with quiet dignity. "This victory isn't mine alone. It belongs to my grandmother Afia, to every immigrant who cleaned dishes while hiding culinary genius, to everyone forced to watch their heritage repackaged and renamed. The trophy may have my name, but the achievement belongs to generations." The competition became a watershed moment. Within months, food publications ran features on hidden talents in restaurant kitchens. Line cooks and dishwashers with deep culinary knowledge were suddenly visible. Restaurant investors began asking different questions, not just "where did you train?" but "what food traditions do you carry?" 6 months later, Maya opened Afia in Manhattan, named for her grandmother, who relocated to New York to serve as the restaurant's cultural consultant. The kitchen staff represented 12 countries, many hired from positions where their talents had been overlooked. "We don't just honor heritage," Maya explained at the opening. "We honor its carriers." Antoine's journey proved more difficult. His restaurant closed permanently. His endorsements vanished. 4 months, he disappeared from public view. When he re-emerged, it wasn't with a new concept or cookbook. Instead, Antoine enrolled in community cooking classes taught by immigrant chefs. He traveled to Morocco to learn from Mateo's family. He volunteered at a culinary program for refugees. The man who had demanded perfection now embraced the humility of beginning again. 1 year after the competition, Maya launched a cooking program for underprivileged youth in the Bronx. The first class filled immediately, with children eager to learn from the chef whose story had inspired millions. On opening day, Maya noticed a familiar figure entering at the back of the room. Antoine, carrying not a chef's knife but a student's notebook, nodded respectfully before taking a seat among the children. "Today," Maya announced, making eye contact with her former adversary, "we're learning that food isn't just something we make, it's something we inherit, transform, and pass forward. Every dish tells a story. What story will yours tell?" As 20 young hands reached for ingredients, the cycle began anew. Heritage honored, talent recognized, knowledge shared rather than stolen. Every family has stories worth preserving. Our storytelling prompt workbook is disappearing quickly. Many have already secured their copy while limited copies remain. What recipes and traditions will be lost forever in your family if not captured now? The wisdom of generations fades with each passing day. This is your final opportunity to preserve what cannot be replaced. Claim yours by clicking the link in the pinned comment before it's too late.